It's Mortal Kombat week. I've trained for this, I've prepared for this, I've watched the movies, I played the video games. I even tried to perfect my voice to do the perfect finish him. With minimal success, but that's okay, because the new Mortal Kombat 2 is coming out this week, and what better way to celebrate that than by going back to the beginning?
Choose your fighter.
Ah, I see where we're going. First option, classic, brutal, and iconic. Second option, also classic, but maybe not in the same way as the other one.
Ready? Fight!
Hey, wait, I haven't even picked my fighter yet. Well, I guess in order to pick my fighter, I have to review both of them. Let's get to it. Roll the intro. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Big Screen Leap, the show where we take stories from words, pixels, and scripts and see how they land as Hollywood hits. I'm your host, William Redmond. Today, oh boy, we are stepping into one of the loudest, craziest, most iconic adaptations of the 90s. Today, we're talking about the 1992 video game Mortal Kombat and its less intense 1995 movie adaptation. And trust me, I'm not just excited to talk about one of the greatest video game franchises of all time, but later this week on Friday, Mortal Kombat 2, starring Carl Urban as Johnny Cage, is coming to theaters. So what better time to revisit a movie that got kids to scream Mortal Kombat while also introducing them to techno? And yeah, before you ask, that song still hits. This episode is going to have everything. Ninjas in impossible colors, thunder gods with bad attitudes, four-armed monsters, ancient tournaments deciding the fate of Earth, and a movie that somehow turned down the intensity. Which raises a lot of questions. How do we get a fighting game with not a lot of story, but a ton of gruesome moments, and turn it into a fun movie without as much gore? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Was Mortal Kombat worth the hype? Should we have shouted, "Get over here" at our TV? Or was this an idea that should have stayed in Outworld? Well, let's get to it. It's tournament time, baby. Round 1. Fight. Now, if you're only used to modern Mortal Kombat, the very first game may surprise you, because it's very simple. Simple, but mythic. The lore was there, it was just hidden. At the heart of this game is an ancient tournament fought between realms known as Mortal Kombat. And we're not talking about some tournament like the all-valiant Karate Kid. This one has serious cosmic stakes. According to legend, if one realm wins 10 tournaments in a row, they gain the right to invade the losing realm. And Earth? Well, it's on the brink of destruction, because the realm known as Outworld has already won 9, meaning one more and it's game over for Earth. No pressure, right? The person overseeing this tournament for Outworld? A sinister sorcerer named Shang Tsung, a soul-stealing wizard, an ancient manipulator, the tournament master, and a guy who looks at ethical boundaries the same way a lot of people look at terms and conditions. Now, we're introduced to 3 heroes who could potentially be the savior of Earthrealm. First up, you have Liu Kang. He's basically the chosen one. He's a Shaolin monk, a disciplined warrior, basically a hero archetype straight out of a kung fu legend. He enters the tournament because he wants to stop the corruption that Shang Tsung is causing. Liu Kang was fun to play as because you could do flying kicks, throw fireballs, and do bicycle kicks with them. Which, as kids of the 90s, that made us believe that if we worked hard enough, we could do bicycle kicks ourselves. Spoiler alert, we couldn't, and we got hurt a lot. Our next fighter is Johnny Cage. Johnny Cage, in my opinion, is an icon of the Mortal Kombat games. Again, with the early games, there isn't much dialogue, but as we get more and more games, Johnny's ego becomes bigger and bigger, which supports the fact that he's the comedic foil of the Mortal Kombat games. In the first game, Johnny is a martial arts actor who gets tricked by Shang Tsung into entering Mortal Kombat to prove to everyone that he doesn't just use stunt doubles and special effects in his movies, but that he truly is a real martial artist. This ends up being an incredible story because most heroes are seeking honor. Johnny, however, is seeking reviews. Johnny is what happens when an action star walks into mythology by accident, and I love him for it. Our third hero of the game is Sonya Blade, who is lieutenant of a special forces unit that is pursuing a criminal named Kano. She follows Kano to the mysterious island where Mortal Kombat is being held, and is then forced to compete in the tournament. What starts as a law enforcement mission somehow spirals into ancient interdimensional warfare. Imagine filing that report. Suspect fled to mysterious Death Island, encountered four-armed monster. Yeah, good luck with that report. Finally, you have Raiden. Raiden is the thunder god who protects Earthrealm. He's the one who picks and trains the Earthrealm fighters for Mortal Kombat. He shoots lightning, teleports, and wears a hat so iconic, honestly, it probably deserves its own game. So obviously we can't have a tournament without some competition. So, here are our fighters representing Outworld. First up, you have Sub-Zero, a ninja who's able to create ice out of thin air. He uses his powers to freeze you solid, then uppercut you. His presence made the game feel supernatural, showing that this wasn't just regular kung fu fighting anymore. Then, you have Scorpion. He's an undead ninja specter with fire powers, a kunai attached to a chain which he throws at his enemies, and when it connects, you're going to hear his most iconic line, "Get over here!" Which, in my opinion, is one of gaming's Mount Rushmore quotes. No debate whatsoever. Even people who have never played the game before know that quote. That's the kind of power it has. And honestly, Sub-Zero and Scorpion have so much backstory together that it would take me another video to explain it all. Finally, you have Goro. Oh my goodness, where do I even start about Goro? When he first appears in the game, all you can think is panic. He's absolutely massive, has 4 arms, he wasn't just a final boss, he was a legend. And as a kid, he seemed absolutely unbeatable. I mean, how do you fight somebody with twice the punching inventory? It felt unfair. 'Cause really, it was. The setup was pretty simple. You picked a fighter, went through an onslaught of enemies, and tried to deplete their health bar to win the round. 2 rounds won meant you won the match. If you get through all the other fighters, you then fought Goro, and if you beat Goro, your final match is against Shang Tsung. But here's the thing that separated Mortal Kombat from the other fighting games. Fatalities. Because honestly, this wasn't just a mechanic, it was a revolution in gaming. Or a public concern. Actually, maybe it was both. When you won a match, it didn't end with you win, it ended with finish him. Each character had a special fatality that they could do with a certain combo with the joystick and buttons, and each fatality got more and more gruesome. I won't get into too much detail about it, because honestly, it's something that you need to experience for yourself to understand this game. This game was nuts. Beautifully nuts. And it's still something that the games use to this day. Where other fighting games you just knock out your opponents, Mortal Kombat made your parents nervous. But underneath all the spectacle, there's a simple classic story. Good versus evil, honor versus corruption, Earth versus conquest, and heroes against impossible odds. It's practically myth, just with more uppercuts. At the end of the day, there was some heroic storytelling. We just don't really remember it, because we were too busy trying to figure out the combos for the fatalities. Now, after the arcade phenomenon of Mortal Kombat, Hollywood steps in and says, you know what needs a movie? That game where you rip people's spines out. And somehow, Mortal Kombat the movie pulled it off, because this wasn't just a cover of a video game, this was a fantasy martial arts adventure. The movie starts off by easing us into the lore of Mortal Kombat. Nah, just kidding. We don't have time for that. So the movie opens with Shang Tsung, played by the late Hiroyuki Tagawa, stealing a soul. Immediately, the movie tells you exactly what we're dealing with. Chaos, and Shang Tsung is absolutely terrifying. Not in a cartoony villain type of way, but more charisma. like he's smiling while ruining your life. Which honestly, might be even worse. After that opening, we meet our three heroes, each getting their own setup like separate action movies before they collide. Which actually works really well. It made them feel like co-leads and not just sidekicks. First up, we have Liu Kang, played by Robin Shu, who is haunted by guilt. His brother Chan was killed by Shang Tsung in an earlier tournament, and because of this, Liu has left the Shaolin path. Their spiritual conflict, inner struggle, and real emotional stakes. For a movie based on a fighting game, this probably shouldn't work as well, but it does. His arc becomes about returning to purpose, facing fear, confronting vengeance, and becoming the champion Earth needs, with more flying kicks. Next, we cut to Johnny Cage, played by Lyndon Ashby, who's filming action scenes, but struggling because of the people he's working with. He's also dealing with the fact that the tabloids are calling him a fake, and critics are accusing him of being a fraud. Shang Tsung visits Johnny, disguised as one of his former mentors, and convinces him to enter Mortal Kombat to show everyone he isn't a fake. Like the game, Johnny becomes the movie's comedic engine. Every sarcastic line lands, every ego joke works, and he definitely provides the energy. Johnny's in there to make sure everybody knows this movie doesn't need to take itself so seriously. And somehow, it ends up being the perfect balance. Then we meet Sonya Blade, played by Bridget Wilson Sampras. Like in the game, she's hunting Kano, but not because he's a criminal, but because Kano killed her partner and she's seeking vengeance. Which was a really sad situation, seeing that her partner was 2 weeks away from retirement. I regret nothing, I tell you. Nothing! The film draws our heroes to a mysterious ship, and this whole scene is amazing. You've got fog, ancient atmosphere, strange passengers. It's kind of like a kung fu ghost story. Finally, Raiden arrives. Raiden, played by Christopher Lambert, in my opinion, is the greatest thing about this movie. He doesn't just come in and play it like an ancient deity. He's weird, sarcastic, and feels less like he's a mentor to our heroes and more like their babysitter. And somehow, this all ends up landing perfectly. Our heroes arrive to the mysterious island, and pretty soon after, everything levels up. You've got stone temples, torches, more fog, and even shadow warriors. This is where the movie starts to feel like a fantasy epic. We meet Sub-Zero and Scorpion, and right away, these two make sure everyone knows they're not messing around. We also meet Princess Kitana, who wasn't in the first game, but appeared in the second game. Kitana, even though she's from Outworld, for whatever reason, doesn't want Outworld to win, and spends her time helping Liu Kang. But we don't have all time for that. It's time for the tournament to begin, and this is where the film starts cashing its checks. Liu Kang gets a pretty easy victory against an unknown fighter. Sonya's first opponent is Kano, and this fight is a lot of fun, mainly because it feels personal. They trade blows, but eventually Sonya gets the upper hand on Kano. Then we get Johnny Cage vs. Scorpion, which, in my opinion, is one of the top two fights of this movie. They first battle it out in a strange forest, then Scorpion teleports them to some strange underworld. They battle it out for a while, with Johnny eventually winning the match, proving he's not just an actor. Liu Kang then battles Sub-Zero, and it's not a bad fight, but it could have been better. Liu Kang eventually gets the win with the help of a bucket. Alright, moving on. Then we get Goro. Goro in the movie is just as terrifying as he is in the game, and the movie builds him up that way. He's not just a monster. He's an absolute legend, an undefeated champion. He steps into the tournament and immediately starts wiping out tons of unknown fighters from Earthrealm, making it look like Outworld is on the brink of domination. But then Johnny Cage steps in and doesn't win through strength, but with wit. Again, classic Johnny being the comedic foil ends up working in his favor, but then the tournament takes a twist. Shang Tsung enacts a rule that allows him to pick his fighter for final combat. And who does he pick? Not Liu, not Johnny, but Sonya. He takes her to another area of Outworld where Liu and Johnny go, but Raiden can't follow. They pursue, Liu ends up fighting with a ninja called Reptile, and they then storm the temple along with Kitana before Shang Tsung could fight Sonya. Liu Kang challenges Shang Tsung to final combat. The fight is an epic one, with Shang Tsung using multiple souls, including Liu's brother, to try and defeat him. But eventually, Liu overcomes his guilt and struggles and ends up defeating Shang Tsung, becoming the winner of Mortal Kombat and ending Outworld's win streak. We end the movie with our heroes returning to Earth to celebrate, but lo and behold, the Emperor of Outworld, Shao Kahn, invades, setting up the sequel. Which, yeah, one of these days we're going to have to talk about Mortal Kombat Annihilation. But it's not this day. Moving on to the productions. The original Mortal Kombat game was developed by Midway Games and created by Ed Boon and John Tobias. Legend says they originally considered making a game starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, but the license fell through, and instead, we got Mortal Kombat. And Van Damme went on to go star in another fighting video game adaptation that we're going to have to talk about. But not today. The biggest innovation of this game was that it didn't just use pixels. It took real actors who filmed doing all the fighting moves, and then they were turned into sprites. This game's realism was unlike anything else. And let's be honest, we've seen other companies try to replicate this, but no one was ever as successful with it as Mortal Kombat. Now, fatalities. We already touched on them in the plot. However, they didn't just have an impact on fighting video games, they had an impact on the video game business as a whole. When Mortal Kombat came out and the fatalities were shown, kids cheered, parents panicked. They went and complained so hard that politicians took notice as well. So many people condemned this game because of its violent showing that the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, or ESRB, was created. So for those of you who play video games, you know that little white corner in the bottom of your box that says whether the game is for everybody or for mature audiences only. Or if you grew up in the 90s like I did, and you had to convince your parents to let you rent certain games because of the ESRB, you have Mortal Kombat to thank for that. But honestly, that's okay, because Mortal Kombat is still one of the best video games of all time. The Mortal Kombat franchise isn't just a fighting game. It's one of the top 3 fighting game franchises, along with Street Fighter and Tekken. But again, what sets it apart from those two is the graphic violence. Where those two games just have you punch your opponent until they can't go no more, Mortal Kombat turns it up a notch and says, we're not just here for victory, we're here for total carnage. The movie was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson in the 90s. Some of you might know him now as the Adaptation King, but back then, he was just a small-time director. The big draw of the Mortal Kombat movie was the fact that they used practical effects in a large majority of the film. Goro, an animatronic puppet who was massive, somewhat complicated, and definitely expensive. Of course, we can't talk about Mortal Kombat without talking about the soundtrack. Unfortunately, I can't play it here because I don't want to deal with copyright claims on the music. But let's just say, the music is a huge part of the movie. Even if the only thing you remember is the shouting of Mortal Kombat, you know immediately where that soundtrack is coming from. Now, before we close this segment out and move on to the similarities and differences, I have to talk about the controversy that still sparks debates to this day. Why Mortal Kombat decided to be PG-13 instead of rated R. Again, the game made parents absolutely freak out and led to the ESRB being created. The game where there was potential for your character to lose their limbs, suddenly the movie was like, let's tone that down. When the movie was announced, the fans expected one thing: brutality. Because Mortal Kombat without brutality is like a superhero movie without powers, a sports movie without a championship, or Johnny Cage without sunglasses. It's totally missing something. So when fans sat down in theaters, there was definitely confusion and honestly, a little disappointment. Because the expectation was getting to see fatalities on the big screen, and instead, fans got a suggestion of fatalities. Now, to be fair, there were legit reasons for making this PG-13. By doing this, you could potentially generate a bigger box office than you would with a rated R film. This meant that teens could go, and kids could go too, with adult supervision. By making it R, you cut down on your audience, and let's be honest, video game movies in the 90s were not guaranteed hits. And the fact that this video game was so controversial Making it an R-rated movie would have been like pouring gasoline on fire. So the studio decided to play it safe. Financially, it ended up working out. Creatively, well, that's something that's still debated to this day, and what leads us to the similarities and differences. So when you look at the similarities between the video game and the movie, they're shockingly similar, which is very surprising because the first video game didn't really give us a lot of info with the lore. We had to go find it. And the movie, you would think, would just be like, okay, no lore, we're going to do what we want to do. But it ends up staying surprisingly close to the video game. The core premise stays the same. You have the tournament to decide the Earth's fate, the characters and their stories and purposes for entering the tournament are still intact, and you have all the characters from the first game in the movie. Speaking of the characters, their personalities came straight from the game. Except for Raiden, but we'll get to that. Johnny's egotistical, Sonya is fierce, Lou is honorable. They feel like the sprites jumped out of the arcade box and said that they were ready for their close-up. The fights, despite there not being a lot of carnage, are done fairly well. We get experiences with not only our heroes, but Scorpion has his moments, Sub-Zero has his moments, and Goro definitely had his moments. The movie gives fans major arcade moments, and that definitely mattered. Finally, the tone of both the game and the movie are similar. The movie understands that Mortal Kombat is both serious and gloriously ridiculous. That balance is usually hard to do, but the movie nails it. So the movie for the most part understands and respects the lore of the game, but obviously you can't make a movie adaptation without making some changes. Let's get to those differences. The differences between the movie and the video game are so big, they'd honestly be hard to miss. First off, the game is much darker compared to the movie. There's a lot more violence and gore in the game. In the movie though, PG-13 violence, which means some things were intense, but not spine-removing intense. Which honestly, is probably healthier for society. Maybe. Next, while the movie kept the lore in for the most part, it did simplify it quite a bit. The game had multiple clans, multiple realms, and even some politics within the lore. The movie trims it down a little bit, which, yeah, makes it more accessible for moviegoers, but loses some of the spirit for the big fans. Like I said before, all of the characters are identical to their game counterparts, except for Raiden. In the game, he's an ancient thunder god. In the movie, yeah, he's a god. But it also feels like he should be teaching philosophy at a community college. Again, Christopher Lambert is a lot of fun in the movie, even though he offers a much different vibe. So after stepping into the tournament, an ice ninja, a soul-stealing wizard, a four-armed monster, a thunder god with questionable mentoring skills, and enough techno music to subconsciously live in our head, was it worth it for Mortal Kombat to make the leap from video game to movie? Well, yeah. Definitely yeah. But it's not a flawless victory. It's kind of a last-second victory. Almost like you're playing the game and you're button mashing in the final round to get the win, but it's still a win. Mortal Kombat does something a lot of adaptations fail to do. It captures enough of what made Mortal Kombat special. That alone is a big achievement. The mythology is there, the tournament is there, the fighters feel recognizable, the energy is there, and the fun is absolutely there. It was made by people who understood the assignment, and that means a lot, especially in 1995, especially for a video game movie, especially when good video game adaptations were practically a mythological creature. But let's be honest, it doesn't land every hit. Some parts got messy, and some things don't survive the leap untouched. The lore got simplified heavily, the violence got toned down a lot, some characters lost their depth. Where the game was raw chaotic danger, the movie gets polished into fantasy adventure. And while it helps the movie work, it also keeps it from becoming the definitive perfect adaptation. That's why I can't call it flawless, because flawless means I have no notes. And I have several notes for this movie. If I didn't, it would have been pointless for me to do an episode of Big Screen Leap on this movie. This movie was a hard-fought win, and honestly, that's what makes it fitting, because what is Mortal Kombat if not struggle? The adaptation earned its victory. It stumbled, sure, but it got back up, took some damage, but landed a combo that gave it the win. The movie got more right than what it got wrong, and honestly, that tips the verdict. Even though we missed some of the darker edge, what it gets right, it really gets right. So the leap definitely works, it's just not a perfect one. But if you want more violence, I definitely recommend checking out the 2021 Mortal Kombat and then going to see the sequel later this week. They'll give you the violence that you want. But that's all the time that we have for today. Did you enjoy 1995's Mortal Kombat? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video you saw today, consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and ringing that notification bell so you're notified next time we post a video. Until next time, from page to screen, and everything in between, this has been the Big Screen Leap. And remember to always test your might, and I'll see you in the next round. Bye everyone.